This week I learned time off of work sure seems to go by a lot faster than time at work. Hey, what's up, bookworms? Mike back with another weekly update, guys. We have reached the final month of the year, December the 1st. Can you believe it? Doesn't seem like it's been a full year already, but hey, here we are, and we are going to talk about the week that was, the week that will be, and the week that currently is, I guess. And we're going to begin like always, guys. Let's talk about what am I reading. If you didn't catch the short, I finished Tiamat's Wrath, book number 8 of The Expanse. Guys, this series just continues to wow me in so many ways. I think making the decision to read books 8 and 9 kind of back to back was a great one because that long pause I had between book 7 and 8, which I know sounds awful if you're one of those people who had to wait in between these books for this, but it was excruciating, and the payoff was absolutely amazing. I was kind of in fear. I was always told that books 7, 8, and 9 were kind of, one story, so I was kind of in fear that 7 was going to be all this awesome premise, and then 8 was going to kind of be, well, let's just kind of fluff it out a little bit and kind of just set up book 9. Not at all, guys. This book was absolutely action-packed, very heart-wrenching. Character deaths. There are people switching sides. There are things that I thought was going to go one way that completely, when I thought they were going to zig, they zagged. But never in a way where anything's felt like, we're subverting expectations just for the hell of it. Everything feels well mapped out and just incredibly paced. And I've never felt bored one time. I think I ripped through that book in like 4 days. And I don't imagine it'll take me much longer to do the final book in the series. But guys, it's a series I feel like, I don't know if it's just because enough people haven't gotten this far to the series. It's like I don't feel like I hear anybody talk about this. I always hear you talk about like first 3 or 4 books, how they feel about it. But I think about where the series is at now and where the series was at the end of book 1. And it's just almost like a completely different galaxy, because it is. But guys, it's so much of a good time. It's smart. It's very thoughtful. It's very hurtful in many ways, but I think that's when you're dealing with space and space travel, interstellar travel. That's going to be. Some things are going to get kind of dicey, and not everyone's going to be safe because space. If you watch For All Mankind, guys, space wants you dead. It does not want you there. So it's very true to that. And so trying to say goodbye to some of these characters has been really tough, and that's how you just know that you really have been wrapped up in a really great series, is if you're caring about these words on a page when they are no longer going to be there anymore. And it's done that in spades. But very excited about the conclusion of that series here coming up. I did also finish ℓ book number 7, I guess. This is a Legacy, book 1 of Legacy of the _�ρ. Another fun adventure. This is one of those I kind of been waiting for ever since Sojourn, where I'm like, okay, so when are those demons going to come home to roost, that he walked away from? His past is going to find him eventually, and it does in this book. I love the way that he continues to have Artemis Entreri and ℓ play off of each other. It's a relationship I really enjoyed when I did Icewind Dale, because I feel like Entreri is like very much the contrast to ℓ, where he's the human with the drow morals, and ℓ is the drow with the human morals, and I think it really continues to play off of that. Got me a real big trick about the halfway point in this. There was a character that you thought was a certain character. There was something that kind of turned out not to be the case, and it completely surprised me. So again, I know everybody will say these traditional stuff that never going to really surprise you. I was surprised with this book, and I like where it's headed. It's one of those where I knew that these things were going to catch up with them eventually, and I'm excited to continue with it, especially since most people have told me that Legacy is their least favorite book in the Legacy of the ℓ. So if it only gets better from here, well, I'm excited to continue with it. But those continue to be just awesome palate cleansers, guys. You want something big, something small rather, between big epic fantasy reads. I definitely think that ℓ is the way to go, because you'll remember all those things that you love about traditional fantasy, while also getting a few surprises here and there. And the action, again, this action is second to none, man. I think when there's an action scene in those books, you can almost hear like adventure music playing in your head, because it's just so well written and cinematic, and I can't get enough of it. Only thing I changed, I want a little bit more Guinevere in the next few books, but for what was going on in this series, or the story, I understood why Guinevere kind of had to take a back seat, because it is kind of playing into what happens to ℓ in this book. But that's about the only real complaint I have about it. I'm excited to continue with the next one, which I forget what the title of it's called. Streamless Blades. I don't know. Anyway, with those, there's so many names of them. You just kind of go with them as they come, and then it's kind of like the Robin Hood books. You think you're never going to be able to learn the names of them, and then you read them and you kind of memorize them. And I finished volume number 18 of One Piece, guys. Got introduced to the character Ace, which I know is kind of a fan favorite. I talked about how my kid has been a big spoiler machine. He already spoiled something about Ace with me. So, again, that's them strays that you catch around your own house from your own kids, when they watch the anime of One Piece. But it did a really good backstory. Again, I said last week that Sensei Oda is very much, or is it Oda Sensei? I never remember if I say it the other way or not. Guys, please let me know. Is that he continues to be the master of the backstory. And with this, he does like the backstory of this character that I just met, and like literally within a couple of pages, he's telling the backstory of this character, establishing like how this city that they're traveling to, kind of its backstory, along with this one character, and even that was really, really good. So he continues to just be just the best at backstory. It's one of those things where usually I'm like, hey, can we focus on the plot at hand instead of always flashing back? No, it's like, animal will show up, and I'm like, I want to know the backstory of that animal. Like this has a camel that, I don't know, I guess he's preferential just to beautiful women riding him. He doesn't want to let any stinky, smelly, ugly guys ride him. So it's just, hey, I can relate. But just little quirks like that make this series a lot of fun. And then he will do these backstories that are just super serious, and they're great. They really are really, really good. So again, I continue to be wrong about One Piece, guys. It is actually quite a lot of fun. I'm enjoying where it's headed. So what am I going to read, guys? I kind of let the cat out of the bag. I've already started Leviathan Falls, the last book in the Expanse. I made the decision to read that as the last book of November and then the first book of December, so I could get this story out in kind of one emotional heart punch. Not that far into it enough to make a decision about it yet, but I'm not worried. I think it's going to end up being great because, like I said, I think my least favorite book in the series so far, Babylon's Ashes, was still really good. So I'm not worried about this being really great. I'm convinced it's going to stick the landing just because so many people that have finished it have said that the landing is amazing. But I am fearful, again, about how many characters I'm going to lose along the way. But it is very much going to be a satisfying story. I'm very, very convinced of that up to this point. Although, the characters I have lost in the last couple books, I am missing their presence in this book. But there's enough going on that I'm never, ever feeling like, oh, well, this book just feels incomplete now. You miss them, and they're never forgotten. But, the characters are still there, are very much driving the story in a way that I'm very, very excited about. And I'll say more next week when I actually finish it. But as of right now, I'm just going to enjoy this final ride with the crew of the Rocinante and just hope for the best, but expect the worst, I guess, as far as their fates go. But as far as the story goes, not worried at all. It's going to be great. And I'm really, really happy that I buckled down and did this series this year because, like I said, I haven't read enough series to do my favorite sci-fi series of all time, but this would be a top fiver, no doubt. It's not even close. This is a really, really great series. And I say besides like Red Rising, it might be my favorite that I've read. So it's so good, guys. It really is. And I hope some more people will buckle down. I've had a lot of people ask me, I really liked the first book or, second or third book kind of lost me. Guys, it gets better and better. I thought it was a really good series, the first 4. And then book 5, it just kicked into a different gear and it hasn't let up since. And it's amazing. It's amazing. So I hope you guys will check it out. Then it's going to be penultimate time for Realm of the Eldlings, Fool's Quest. I really, really liked Fool's Assassin. So I'm hoping that this doesn't go the way that Tawny Man did. With Tawny Man, I loved the first book, which was Fool's Errand. Loved it. And then Golden Fool was one of my least favorites in the series. So I'm hoping that doesn't do this. But I do feel like the first book in this did slice of life in a way that I really, really enjoyed, whereas Golden Fool did not. So with this, I feel like it's going to have a lot more of the dad stuff that I'm really into, that I think that will really, really click with me. And now that it seems like it's going to be a Fitz revenge tour, then I'm all for that, because Fitz is always, he's made dumb decisions. You always want to kind of shake Fitz as like one of your kids, like, why are you doing this? What's wrong with you? Open your eyes, think. But with this, it's like I've always felt like he tries to do the right thing usually, and he will kind of be reserved. In this, I'm like, sometimes you got to play nasty. Like your villain, your enemies are going to play nasty. You better play a little nasty, and I say nasty a little British sometimes, I guess. But that just happens. But yeah, I'm excited to see maybe Fitz a little no holds barred in this one because I'm here for it. Let an assassin be an assassin. I'm all for that. And then I'll continue with One Piece. I got volume 19 out. Imagine I'll probably try to do 19 and 20 this week, just depending on how things go. But, I don't have a lot of other side things going on. This week I've read a lot because I've been on vacation, and it's been nice to, have like those 4 to 5 hours of just kind of uninterrupted reading time. And yeah, it's bliss. It really is just true bliss. But, you know, I do go back to work this week. And, you know, that first day back, I don't know what it's like at your job. My job, first day back, and you just kind of watch that email inbox just kind of keep loading and loading and loading. So I expect that to slow me down just a little bit. But I imagine I will be finishing Leviathan Falls this week without a doubt. So how about this week on the channel, guys? I did some extra videos this week since I was off. I talked about how to avoid reading burnout, and this is really just my experience. Obviously, there's no magic bullet. You got to find a formula that works for you. But I make some recommendations of some series and some authors, and, you know, just kind of some genres I think that maybe you should try to switch up every once in a while if you are kind of starting to get a little burnout. I know if you read like 9 or 10 super big, thick boy, just big old doorstopper fantasy books, you can start to burn out a little bit. And I say in that video that, yeah, reading burnout's very real, especially when you spend too much time in one world. You do need to change every once in a while. So I talk about, like I said, some series I think focus on some shorter series, you know, like a Drizzt or Dresden Files, something like that, where they have those almost standalone-ish kind of entries where you can take long breaks between them and you don't miss anything. Because they are kind of, you know, a kind of standalone story in their own regard. They have those threads that kind of continue over into other books. But each book does kind of feel standalone-ish in that regard. And then find you a standalone kind of author like a Stephen King, like a Michael Crichton, you know, where you can have those, you know, just single, this Blake Crouch, where you have just like a couple of characters and you're just kind of doing one single plot over, you know, 300-400 pages, the thrillers, and switch to horror and things like that. Because you can't get those standalones that don't seem to be very prevalent in fantasy. Fantasy seems to be just so reliant on the series, whereas, you know, thrillers and horror and things like that can be much more standalone-ish, and you can kind of use those to kind of, you know, reset the buffer, clear the cache a little bit upstairs, you know, and kind of get you reinvigorated a little bit with reading some of those bigger, thicker books. I also did another Talk About Nothing, and this time it was a Talk About Nothing some more. That's when I have a return guest, and this time it was Christopher Ruocchio, author of Sun Eater, and all-around great human being. The thing was, Christopher and I already had plans to talk about Dune Part 2, because it was closer to the original release date, but it did get moved back, but we still had it on the schedule. And I said, hey, do you still want to just, you know, hang out, just talk? And that's what we did for 2.5 hours. Christopher and I probably could have talked longer, you know, but I don't want to keep him away from too much of his writing. He is writing book number 7 in his series right now. But yeah, it's always fun when I get to talk to Christopher. I consider us, you know, friends in real life. So it's always an easy conversation whenever he and I get together. There's nothing that we can't talk about. Yeah, sure, we grind some axes a few times on some entertainment things, but, you know, we don't talk about books as much because Christopher doesn't read while he is writing. But, you know, of course, he talks about a lot of the things, the process that go into writing. So if you're into those kind of things, I think you'll find something there. And if you are disgruntled with, you know, the direction of Doctor Who and Star Wars right now, I think that might come up. You know, we're both big fans of that. So it's a fun conversation. Anytime I get to talk to Christopher, it is a great day, and I'm glad he was able to join me on a work day such as that when I was off work. Good and the Bad, a series that I've continued to do over the years here, and this was the first time I did one that was not about a book or an author or a series. This was about a website, and I think it's everybody's favorite whipping boy on BookTube. That is Goodreads. It seems like everyone loves to hate on Goodreads. And I just kind of talk about, you know, for what I like to do, I don't find Goodreads a real big problem. Sure, there are things that really annoy me with it, but I kind of present the good things and the not so good things in that video and kind of, you know, make my assessments on them. Sure, the rating system's annoying. It's a bit sluggish sometimes. It does seem like a website that just needs a fresh coat of paint, maybe a bit of an overhaul and an upgrade to the servers. But I say for what I want to do, which is just communicate with my viewers, here's what I'm reading right now. Or if I say, hey, I'm interested in reading this series, let me get some feedback and why I think it's so much better than every other kind of similar service out there, like a Storygraph, is just the sheer number of users on the service, you know, because I like a good aggregate when I am deciding if I'm going to read something instead of just depending on a dozen reviews like Storygraph has. I like to have a few thousand reviews like Goodreads traditionally does, and that kind of helps me balance out if it's something that I'm really looking for one way or the other. So yeah, there are those annoying things about it. But for what it provides for me, I feel like it's good enough. And hey, that's it. So I talk about it in depth in that video, and that's fun for me because I don't feel like I get a chance to kind of address a lot of things outside of just books on the channel. So it's always fun when I kind of step outside of, talking about a particular series or an author for the good and the bad, and, kind of break down what it is for me. Did a coffee short, like I said, on the Expanse, just talking about how I'm continuing to be blown away by the Expanse. Coffee shorts are just, hey, spur of the moment. If they come up, I'm going to do them. Never really make it a point to do it. But it was like I was getting coffee right as I finished ℕ𝕦𝕣𝕠𝕜𝕤, and I said, I've got to talk about this. I got to talk about what's so great about the Expanse. And then on my channel, but I was a guest over on John's channel talking story last night, and we talked for 2 hours about just about anything, and it's a lot of fun. John's got a great channel. He's growing really fast. He's already hit 1,000 subscribers. Hit that really, really quick. And John and I, both Gen Xers, so plenty of us to talk about in there and shake our fists at clouds and talk about back in our day a few times. But it was a fun conversation. We kind of started slow because we actually thought we were going to have to reschedule it because for whatever reason he was using OBS. He doesn't use StreamYard. Couldn't hear me. He could hear me, but the audience couldn't hear me. We got that fixed. And it sounds a little odd, but hey, it worked out pretty well, and it was a great conversation. I had a great time talking with John, and I hope we can do it again. Because I feel like with both these conversations I had this week, we probably could have talked a lot longer. As you can see, I have no problems doing. How about another next week plans, guys? I got a couple of things. Obviously, we're going to wrap up November of 2023. Talk about my book of the month, which is actually quite a close race, and we'll talk about it when I get there. But yeah, obviously wrap-ups are always a ton of fun. Had some big hits and some big misses in November. We're going to talk about those things. I'm also going to be talking about the beginning of my wrapping up of the 2023 videos. November I do my preview for 2024, or my preview for the next year, and in December I usually do my wrapping up the current year. So with this, a new one I'm going to be doing this year is I'm going to take a look at the most surprising things for the channel and myself in 2023. Maybe some series I never expected to pick up, wasn't really in my plans, or some things that were really successful with the audience that I wasn't expecting, and some things that didn't really land with my audience, things like that. Things that if I look back at when I started in 2023, if I could have seen this coming, I think it'll be kind of a fun little video to mess around with. And it's not really, we haven't got a date nailed down yet, but Steve and I over Steve Talk Books, we've been talking about getting together for a conversation over on his channel. We're just kind of trying to make our schedules work out, but we haven't got an actual date planned yet. But we're aiming for Thursday or Friday of next week. But yeah, like I said, when I get time a little closer, I'll make sure I'll let you guys know somewhere on the channel that I'll be headed up over to Steve and talking some books and some other things, I would imagine. Before I go, guys, there are a few TV and movie talk things to talk about here. Fallout, the series on Amazon. It released its first images. They look really good. It looks really, really good. There were some leak screenshots. It looked kind of iffy, but you finally get the final produced ones, which I think are screenshots from the trailer that was showed, I think, at Gamescom. Is that what just happened? They did show a trailer to them, and the feedback's been really positive. Fingers crossed. I think with the track record that Prime Video has had, it's hope for the best, expect the worst. I feel like their thrillers have really turned out. Like, I really like Bosch. I really like Reacher. So I feel like that's been kind of their forte, whereas their fantasy stuff's been kind of, oh, God, just like a atrocious track record, Rings of Power and with Wheel of Time. But so this one, I don't know where it's going to fall, because I feel like this is really the first real big kind of step into sci-fi since The Expanse. I don't count that because they acquired that from someone else. With this one, it's encouraging. It's encouraging. It looks really awesome. I mean, the Brotherhood of Steel looks amazing. Like the armor just looks like it's ripped straight from the game. Several things look like they're ripped straight from the game. Like I even saw something that was like the gas sign, the sign from the gas station, and it's like exactly identical with what is shown on the game. So it looks cool. I'm encouraged. I like the way they've got this kind of the setup of 3 different main characters. So you get kind of 3 different points of view. So one, you get this character who's like just a squire in the Brotherhood of Steel, which is like the lowest ranking you can have in the Brotherhood of Steel. So getting that point of view, you're getting a point of view of a girl in the vault. So you see what that life is like, and having to leave the vault for the first time and seeing what has happened to this post-apocalyptic world. And then you get the point of view of a ghoul, which is something I didn't expect. That's kind of I think show these 2 first-timers out on the wasteland, kind of how life goes. And that ghoul is going to be played by Walton Goggins, who I love, guys. Walton Goggins, The Shield, Justified. This guy's great in everything I've seen him in. So I'm very excited to see him in this role. I did hear some complaining that, like, oh, the ghoul, he doesn't look as a ghoul. So I think when you get an actor like Walton Goggins, you want him to be kind of recognizable, even if it is without a nose. So I get why they're doing that. But I'm encouraged. It looks cool. Todd Howard, the guy who runs Bethesda, he is an executive producer on the series. And I feel like hopefully that means that they're going to be staying honest to the source material, because what I didn't realize is apparently this is going to be canon to the series. So to me, that says they're not just letting them go all willy-nilly like they let Rafe Judkins do. They're going to hold them accountable and say, hey, this needs to fit into the narrative of the universe that we've created. So that has me a little optimistic, because, guys, Fallout, when I played Fallout 3, look, I got so obsessed with the lore that I was reading like history books and stuff of that lore. It's really, really good if they lean into it. So they got lots and lots of stuff to work with here. It could be really great, and it doesn't look cheap. So that's encouraging. But, with a lot of things on Prime Video, they haven't looked cheap. But, once you see the execution, it hasn't been so great. So hopefully this can be a nice firm middle ground between the two. Really good writing, and it doesn't look cheap. So hopefully we can find something there, because I would love for this series to be great. I really would. I love the Fallout series. We got an official start date for Shogun, February the 27th. I'm going to start reading Shogun in January, and I don't know if I'll be done by then, but I think it's just going to be weekly on FX. Maybe I can catch up as it goes along, but we'll see. We'll see how long Shogun takes me to read, but very excited about that now that we have an official release date. Something I brought up this past week on Twitter was just saying, I wonder how the movie King Kong from 2005 by Peter Jackson, I wonder how it's aged, because I said when it came out, I remember feeling disappointed in the theater, and I think what it was, like, just your expectations were so high after Lord of the Rings on Peter Jackson, and I was like, I started thinking about it. I was like, I can't really think about anything I disliked about it. It had an amazing cast. The special effects were kind of ahead of their time. And it was an age-old story. It felt like a love letter to the original 1930s King Kong. It was a remake, sure, but it never felt like it strayed too much, I think, from that original story. It just expanded on some things. So I was like, what did I not like about it? I couldn't really remember. So I finally said, hey, I'm going to check out this extended edition Blu-ray that I bought years ago and never watched, and watched it with my kids. And it was a different time in 2005, guys, is because you think about the first 45 to almost an hour of that movie is very, very slow burn, very, very character introduction, talking about why they're going to Skull Island, setting up all these things, all these struggles between the characters, and then it just hits another gear and it doesn't ever let off. And I loved it. I mean, my kids, yeah, they were struggling a little bit in the beginning there, but they were invested enough to keep going. And once Kong actually shows up and all the other creepy crawlies on Skull Island, it was fun. Like my kid said, it's probably the most fun he's had with a monster movie since Jurassic Park. And I mean, that's just a ringing endorsement. This is a kid who loved Godzilla vs. King Kong because he loves Godzilla. So for him, I was like, you gonna be okay watching King Kong on his own? He's like, I like King Kong. He just can't beat Godzilla to fight. So it was fun. It's really fun. And like I said, it did feel like a love letter to the original movie. And so I don't know what was wrong with me back then. Like I said, the Lord of the Rings hangover might have just been too much. But yeah, I mean, it looks great. Sure, there's some things where you're still like, yeah, that does look like 20-plus-year-old CGI. But I still would argue it looks better than most of the Disney Plus things that come out now, as far as CGI, or the third act CGI diarrhea that a lot of these epic superhero movies do now. So I think in that regard, it looks really great. And yeah, it does kind of feel like a Jurassic Park movie. And I'd argue it's probably, if it was, it'd be the second best Jurassic Park movie. So the Kong fighting the T-Rex is just an amazing scene. It really did kind of turn it to 11, but it still felt like a really, really fun adventure, and I had a great time with it. Naomi Watts, whatever happened to her? I think the biggest question my kids had was like, why isn't Jack Black being funny? Because every movie they'd seen with Jack Black, he'd been funny. Seeing him play like kind of a sleazy movie director kind of was jarring to them. But he was great. Jack Black's always consistent, I feel like, in that regard. And Peter Jackson, great film director. Even if you feel like some of his things have kind of lost the plot, I think King Kong was still where it was very much just being forward-thinking and still trying to make sure he wrote a really, really great story. And I think it's worth your time to revisit. So I think it's easily the best King Kong movie out there. Yes, even over the original. Look, I respect the original from the 30s for what it was. It was very much ahead of its time. It was cutting edge for the time. But this is one of those where I feel like, hey, a remake was justified because, technology had caught up. And it was great. It was great. I highly recommend it. Still don't know if I buy Adrien Brody. Is that his name? I don't know if I buy him as like a leading man, kind of heroic character. But it worked out. It worked out pretty good, and I was very, very satisfied with it. And I do recommend you check it out if you never have. So guys, that was my week. What's your week looking like? Why don't you drop in the comments? Let me know what you're watching, what you're reading, what you're listening to, what you're playing, and have yourselves an awesome and fun weekend.